Okay, Gabriel Marcel, Ontological Mystery, Part 2. Okay, so last time, right, let's just do a short recap, right? Last time we talked about the source of all despair, right, which is the inability to connect to this deeper dimension which inhabits all of us, right, according to Marcel. We still haven't proved it completely yet, right? So we have this deeper dimension which he calls being, that most of us are completely disconnected with, and one of the keys, right, to overcome despair is to reconnect, right, with this lost dimension. Now, right now in this text, he's busy arguing for the existence of such a dimension, because remember, he's writing in a context where people don't believe in that anymore. People just believe in science, in what you can see, feel, touch, right? There is no sense anymore in the 20th century in Europe, right, that there is any metaphysical dimension or deeper dimension. There's just life, and everything is random, right? There's no real organization of the universe. There's no intelligent design. There's no creator, right? And Nietzsche made sure that we stopped believing in these silly stories, right, according to him, right? So he knows he's working within a post-Nietzschean world where God is dead, where there is no transcendence, there's only here and now, right? But as a philosopher, right, he has experienced certain experiences in life, gone through certain experiences, experienced certain feelings, which to him pointed to that dimension, right? So he's not coming, like Christianity, from the preconception that there is such a dimension, now let me argue for it, right? He's not doing apologetics. He's not coming from the preconception that there must be a God, now let me argue for it. He's an atheist who stumbled on this dimension, right, through certain key experiences and certain feelings. So make sure you write this down, that Marcel is not an apologetic. He's not coming from Christian background and wanting to argue for this, right? He was an atheist and agnostic, and he stumbles upon this dimension, even though he doesn't have any background in anything like that, right? He stumbles on this through certain experiences. And the last experience we talked about was the experience of fate, right? When you feel that you were meant to meet, that feeling that somehow there is an invisible hand that orchestrated this encounter is an intuition of that deeper dimension of what he calls being or mystery, of a sense of a something which is on our side. Everybody clear on that? Right? Remember, fate is a feeling, the feeling of fate, the feeling that somehow it was meant to be. It's a feeling. It's not a thing in your head. You feel like, damn, I feel like something, something orchestrated this. Right? That particular feeling of it was meant to be, or this was orchestrated, or there was an invisible hand, that feeling is pointing to that deeper dimension, which, and so Marcel is saying, well, this is interesting. If I have this feeling, perhaps there is indeed such a dimension. Of course, he cannot be sure. None of us can be sure. Whether it exists or not, we cannot be sure. But he's saying, what if? That's all he's doing in this text. What if there is such a dimension, right? He's just asking the question. He's not asserting anything he can't, right? And the only way we'll know if there is indeed such a dimension is if we've experienced what he's talking about, right? Yes, Epstein. No question. Okay. All right, everybody clear so far? Okay, let's move on to the next two feelings. Is that a question now?
Yeah.
Okay.
He says this is experiences. It comes up from his experiences. From his writing, you don't draw on the fact that he's had any experiences. Because of the way he writes, it's unclear what those experiences are, how he's drawn from them.
Yeah, he does it. He's not doing an autobiography, right?
But through Nietzsche, you knew his experiences.
Yes.
You knew the man felt pain. You knew the man felt loss.
Yes.
And you knew the man didn't like pity because he felt it. You understand that. Marcel, you don't.
No, the reason why is that he is not talking to us about the experience. He's reflecting on the experience philosophically. So this is already second layer. The first layer is experience. Second layer is let me reflect on this philosophically and see what it means, right? So that's why it sounds very technical, very abstract, but it's coming from an experience, right? But here, you're right. He's not talking to us about the experience, not describing anything. He is already, second layer, reflecting on it. Does that make sense? You see what I'm saying? Kind of? Okay. Right? Now remember, when it comes to hope, which is the second one we're going to do, right? We're going to do hope and the feeling of hope and the feeling of presence. Presence, like to be present, which you are not today, most of you. Okay. So, hope is something which he actually witnessed. And this is really based on something he talks about now. If you wanted to hear about his experiences, I think I mentioned in the introduction, right? Remember, Marcel was working during World War I, part of the Red Cross, right? So his task, do you remember me saying that in the introductory lecture? Do you remember that story? Okay. Now you have a glimpse, right, into his experiences. So his task, remember, was to tell the parents of a deceased soldier that your son has died. Here is the remains, I mean the clothes, right, not the bones, the clothes. So, and he started to notice a pattern, right? I think I said this in the introduction. Every time he would bring the bad news, the family somehow would hang on to the hope that maybe the son made it, right? So he would bring some evidence, right? Some clothing or some personal article, but the family always, most of them, would always systematically hang on to the fact that maybe he's still out there somewhere and we can still hope that one day he will come home, right? So he started to see this over and over again, and now he's here reflecting on that, right? He's thinking, what does it mean, this hope? Are they all crazy? Are they all deluding themselves? Or is there something here? Remember, he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in anything beyond matter, right? So as he's witnessing these people and the experience they're having at that moment, in the deepest moment of grief, yet hope, he's witnessing this and he's thinking about it, and he's thinking, what if they are really tapping into something real? What if they're not deluding themselves? What if they're really having an intuition of something real, right? Of something that should be taken seriously? That's his question. And so now he's going to reflect on it here in this text, right? When he talks about hope. So let's talk about hope here. First of all, we have to distinguish between hope and optimism. This will really clarify for us. We have to distinguish between hope and optimism. Okay. Optimism, let's talk about that. What is optimism based on? Suppose you're scrambling to study for a test, you're worried you might not make it, but then part of you is like, it's going to be okay. What are you basing this it's going to be okay on when you're an optimist? Huh? No, this is different. No, you'll see, no. It's not delusional. You have some ground as an optimist. What is your ground?
Like maybe you studied.
You studied, but you're still stressed. So what are you basing?
False hope.
Ooh, Peralta, what?
False hope.
It's not false, right? The optimism actually has a foundation. You'll see. What is the foundation of all optimism? When you're an optimist, it's not just you're not being necessarily delusional. There's a reason why you're an optimist.
Your perception of the situation?
Close, close.
Praying for a miracle.
No, it's not that. Optimists are actually pretty rational people. They actually have a good reason to be optimistic. What is the reason that you would be optimistic, for example, in finding love or in succeeding in your life? Some people are optimists. Why? What makes them believe that they're going to succeed? Poor idiots. Yes.
You're bound to succeed once.
Yes. Okay, both of you said at the same time, right? The optimist is basing on past experience. He saw people succeed who came from his background. So he's like, oh, I can do that. Or his parents made it, or his siblings made it. So now he's like, yeah, well, I can do that too. Yeah.
Others' past experience?
Yes, others past, or your own past experience. You've always passed the tests, right? So now you're like, okay, I'm scrambling, but I've always made it in the past, so now I'm going to make it. So the optimist usually basing on facts, on something he sees in the material realm, in the visible, physical realm, right? I see other people succeed who come from my background, therefore me too, I can succeed. Or I have succeeded in the past in passing these tests, therefore I will succeed again, right? So optimism is very rational. I've seen it done, I can do it too, why not, right? That's optimism. Now, hope is different. What is hope based on? Is hope based on anything factual? What do you think?
No.
No.
Exactly.
Based on belief.
Okay.
Belief that everything will turn out.
Yes. Okay, so remember these people, they receive actually counterfactual evidence. These families receive the uniform of their son or brother or whatever. So all the facts are saying he's dead. And here they are believing he might be alive. So hope, on the other hand, right, it's not rational, is not based on facts, right? And so remember, Marcel is thinking all feelings are based on reality. What if then this feeling of hope is tapping into a deeper reality? It's a question, right? If this hope has no basis in reality, perhaps it is based in a deeper level of reality that I am not perceiving as clearly as this realm, right? Because all feelings for Marcel point to a reality. If there is a feeling, he believes we should take it seriously. If there is a feeling it's going to be all right, and there is no facts to prove that, then perhaps that person is tapping into something deeper, and that's what Marcel is interested in exploring with us here, right? Yes, Mahmoud.
If those families are experiencing grief in such a strong way, couldn't that feeling of hope just be considered at the first stage of grief denial?
Yes, excellent question. Okay, so let's see why it's not denial, right? Why it's not their delude, right? It's Nietzsche would, thank you. Nietzsche just popped in through Mahmoud, right? Nietzsche is sitting there over there, channeled by Mahmoud. Nietzsche would say, well, see, these people are miserable, and so of course they're projecting, right? Because they're so miserable, they must be projecting this, realm, right? That somehow is going to be okay. But remember, hope is not a projection. It's not happening in your head. It's a feeling that they are fine. You see the difference? You see how you respond to Nietzsche? For Nietzsche, so in other words, hope is a feeling of fullness. It's not a feeling of emptiness. You feel peaceful in the midst of the grief. That's hope. Hope is the ability, or not even the ability, it's the grace, right? The gift of feeling peaceful, that it's going to be okay, that all will be well in the midst of the grief, right? So it's not, Nietzsche, remember, starts with feeling of misery, projection to counteract that. Here, it's not misery. This is a different feeling. Qualitatively, we are talking about a different experience. This is qualitatively different than what Nietzsche is talking about. The feeling here is peace, right? Or hope. It's a fullness. And there's nothing in the brain taking place, right? If you ask them, they're like, I don't know. I don't know why I believe that. It's crazy. And yet I feel it. You see the difference? So I think this is the crux of how we can respond to Nietzsche. Nietzsche is talking about an intellectual construction that you do when you are feeling like you're sinking. When you're feeling so much pain, you want to kind of stay afloat, you construct, right, a reality. Here we're not talking, there's no need to construct. You're not sinking. You're in a way inhabiting the grief gracefully on this, I don't know, with this anchor of hope, right? Are you seeing the difference? Very important you're able to respond to Nietzsche, because that's your test question, right? Anybody, Ramos, you good? Okay. Everybody see what I'm saying? See? Yes, go ahead.
So does the concept of delusion exist to Marcel?
Yes. Delusion is, so we can say there's three experiences. Optimism based on fact, hope based on being, possibly, and delusion, right? Which is a projection based on wretchedness, right? So yes, these are three different experiences that people have, right? You can have optimism. So for example, let's look at the three. That family had another son who survived the war, or the father survived the war. Now they have reason to believe maybe this one also survived the war. Optimism, right? Delusion. They're in grief, they're feeling horrible, and now they're imagining, right? They're constructing the idea that, it can't be, there must be, he will come back, and now they're being delusional, but it's based on a feeling of profound wretchedness. That's the experience. They're so wretched, they're trying to surface with this construction, right? And then you have hope, complete peace within the grief. The mind is empty. Because hope, remember, there is no clear outcome. These families are not saying, I believe he will come back. These families are just saying, I feel like it's going to be okay. I feel like it's not over. They don't know how. They don't see the person coming. They don't imagine he's going to come back. They don't know how it's going to happen. They just have this sense that it's going to be okay. I just feel it, right? So delusion has a clear outcome. Delusion is like, he's going to come back one morning, right? Hope, no outcome, nothing in the head. They don't know. They just absurdly feel that it's going to be okay. Are you seeing the three experiences? That's what it is. If we can distinguish the three, it's very clear, right? Okay, so now I think you can probably respond already with hope, probably. Okay, so let's see what he says here in the text, now that I've explained it. Let's go to the text. Go to page 28. Okay, second paragraph. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay, sorry. First paragraph, second line. Hope consists. Are you there? Who is there? Just wave at me. Okay, thank you. Definition of hope, right? Hope consists in asserting, meaning the feeling you have, you assert it, meaning you give it a seal of approval. You believe it, right? You take it seriously. What he means by asserting is you take seriously this feeling that there is at the heart of being, beyond all data, right? This is beyond all facts, beyond the reality, which is telling you everything is over, right? Beyond all inventories, all calculations of the mind. So this is beyond fact, beyond projection. Make sure you see this, right? Beyond data means beyond the facts. Beyond calculations means beyond your delusional projections, right? It's a feeling of a mysterious principle which is in connivence with me. Connivence means on my side. If you know Spanish, you know is it a preposition? Whatever, the word con, C-O-N, with, okay? So connivence with me, right? Which cannot but will that which I will, if what I will deserves to be willed and is in fact willed by the whole of my being. So this is a feeling that somehow we're going to pull through as a family, as a humanity, as a couple, as an individual, right? Somehow we're going to pull through because something is on our side and is working in our favor. It's a feeling. You don't know, as you're feeling it, you're like, nah, right? Right? Anybody feeling that, especially in the French population, right, who are atheists since the 1800s, right? Since the fall of the emperor and the fall of the church, French people are staunchly atheists. So here they're having these weird feelings. Probably most of these families are like, this is crazy. Why am I feeling this? This makes no sense. I don't believe in this, right? Feeling it. The feeling overrides the mind, right? So this is what he's saying. Hope is the feeling that there's something working on my behalf and that somehow we will pull through. Whether it's as a family or as a couple or as an individual or as humanity itself, we will pull through. There is something moving on our behalf and in our favor, right? Feeling. That's it. Now, how many, before I get your question, how many of you ever had this feeling? This is important because if you've had the feeling, you can understand. Remember, it's the only way to understand what he's saying is to have it. Anybody have this feeling that it's going to be okay, I'm going to pull through? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
I can't really say it's a feeling, but it's more of like a logical reasoning with myself.
You're the optimist. You're the optimist. Right? And that's fine, right? Optimism is perfectly logical and rational. It's a way to pull through. But there are moments in life where you might get hit with your optimism just powder, dissolves. And yet you still feel like, oh my God, I'm going to make, I don't know how, right? Zoom people, how many of you have had this feeling? I'm curious. Okay, 1, 2. Yes, feeling of hope, Ahmed. Yes. Okay, a couple of you. Very good. Right? So again, right, remember, for Marcel, to understand Marcel, you have to have lived a little bit, right? There are certain experiences you have to have had to really prove that what he's saying is true. If you haven't had them yet, you have to wait, right? A lot of what he's talking about is coming out of a deep experience with life, right? Unless you've had such a deep experience, many things you will not understand yet until you've had this, right? So that's the idea here with hope, right? And he's saying again, hope is when I'm feeling this, it's pointing me to this deeper reality? And what if there is really such a reality? And for Marcel, chances are there is, because for him, remember, this is key to his argument. Feelings always point to a reality. There's no random feeling, poof, popping up in your heart, right? Feelings always are triggered, awakened by a reality. So if you take that idea seriously, then you can't help but think, well, maybe then what I'm feeling is true. And again, Marcel is inviting us, why do we not take our feelings seriously? Right? Maybe our feelings are really saying or opening up a truth to us or opening up a deeper dimension. Why not take our feelings seriously? That's all he's saying, right? He's saying, why not, right? He's not asserting that there is, right? He's not preaching to us, right? He's just saying, this is interesting. What if? That's all he's saying. Write this down. All Marcel is doing as an atheist, he's like, having this experience of hope or of faith, or we'll see of presence. This is interesting. I wonder, right, what if it is really true or real what this feeling is sensing, right? What I'm sensing through this feeling. Okay, Ahmed, is that a question or is that from before when I asked you to raise your hand?
Oh, sorry, it's from before. I never put it back down.
Got it. Okay, very good. Okay, any questions on hope before we get to presence? Okay. Now, presence is very interesting. This one I haven't experienced. So, but some of you have. So you will confirm what he's saying or infirm what he's saying. Let me explain first and then we'll go to the text. Okay, presence only occurs if you have deeply loved that person who has passed away, right? Only occurs when there is a bond of love. If there's no bond of love, you're not going to feel that, right? This is a bond which you experience as not having been broken by the death event. In other words, the person died, but you still feel their presence. That's what he's talking about. Okay, let me say it again. It's a bond of love which you do not sense has been broken at the moment of death. The body has dissolved, the person is gone physically out of your life, and yet you still feel through this bond of love, which hasn't been shaken, the person's presence. Now, Marcel experienced this when he was very young. And then I'll tell you a version that I read of this, and then maybe you can tell me if you've experienced this. Right? Marcel, remember his mother died when he was 4. He had no memory of her. So presence is not you remember them and then you feel fuzzy feelings. Right? Presence is not a recollection that, I remember that time when we went to the park. I feel so happy now. No. Marcel had this feeling of presence without even knowing what his mother looked like. She died before he was conscious. He was 3 or 4 years old, right? And yet he talks about how throughout his life, as he was growing up as a child, he always felt a palpable sense of his mother's presence with him. Even though he never knew her, he never remembered her, there was a bond of love between them which was not broken at the moment of death, right? And so having experienced that, philosophically now he's going to ask some questions. And he's going to say, I feel they're still there. I feel their presence. And yet I don't see any evidence of them in the material realm. What if they still were, albeit on a different plane, on a different level? Let me say that again. I feel their presence, right? But there's no evidence of them being here with me in the material realm. What if my feeling is pointing to them still existing or being, yet, albeit on a different level, on a different plane, in a different dimension, but still they are. Otherwise, how could I feel their presence? That's the question he's asking. How can I feel their presence if they are not somehow still not existing in the sense of here and now, but on, right, being, on a sense, right, on a deeper level. So that's the question he's asking. It's a very powerful insight, and he's very courageous to make this, to talk about this, because hardly, since Plato, no philosophers have ventured beyond life, like he's doing right now, right? He is basically moving the boundaries of philosophy, right? Philosophy has always been very cautious. We're talking about love, life, wisdom, pain, suffering. No philosopher is going to talk about, they'll talk about death, about how to be ready for it, but they're not going to venture beyond. Marcel is one of those rare philosophers who ventures beyond and tries to say, well, what if, right? Amoroso.
Could this feeling of presence also apply to a grander scale of like feeling the presence of God or like spirituality presence, or is it just specific?
No, he doesn't do that, but you could. Yes, you could, because it's a way of sensing it. It's somebody who is real for you in a different way than the physical, right? So, by the way, he says, we'll talk about this, right? We should not seek out this presence, right? He's warning us against seeking out this presence. A lot of us, a few of us, hopefully not a lot of us, but a few of us, right? When someone dies, we want to get in touch again, right? So we go see a few people, who know how to do these things, right? And or we try to, we try to conjure their ghost, or we try to see their ghost, right? This is not about ghosts. Why? Because ghosts are here. He's talking about a reality which is more powerful when it is experienced outside of the material. If it's still hovering around whatever and it's weird and you're having voices and whatever, he's saying, no, this is not what I'm talking about, right? He's saying this, you can actually experience more deeply the love of someone once there is no evidence anymore in the material realm, right? And some of us have had this experience, right? The person dies and they're so much more present to us now than when they were still alive around us, right? This is what he's talking about. And so he's saying, what if then there is not a deeper reality in which they are and in which I am tapping, right? Okay, let me tell you this story I read about this experience, and then you can tell me if you've had this, right? This was a very famous actress in France. So she wrote something about losing her partner. 20 years they were together. So basically a marriage, right? People in France don't marry. so it was basically a marriage. She loses him and she says, for 2 weeks, right, I was in complete darkness. I couldn't see anything. I was just underground, right? After those 2 weeks, I felt his presence settle in my heart, and I was at peace, and I have been at peace ever since. Powerful experience. Of course, she's complete atheist. This is not a Catholic actress. Everybody in France. So no sense of spirituality, no sense of the afterlife, wasn't taught anything. Anyway, if you try to teach French people about metaphysics, they really suck because they really haven't developed, because they're not religious at all. So they're missing something in their head, right? The category for metaphysics. It's very hard to teach them metaphysics. So this woman stumbles on this metaphysical dimension. She's in darkness for 2 weeks. She doesn't try anything. She's not reasoning. She's not projecting. And after she's hit by this grace, right? The presence of her beloved comes to her and stays and abides in her. And she's at peace for the rest of, right? Not of her life, of course, but, for that moment up until when she wrote the article. I don't know how she's now, right? But something happened, hit her. Something was given to her like a grace. She didn't conjure it. She didn't project it. It came to her. It happened to her. And Marcel would jump on this and say, well, perhaps she's really tapping into something. Perhaps she is really connecting or still connected somehow with her beloved, albeit on a different plane of existence. Make sense? Questions? Who had this experience? I didn't. So who had this experience? I'm curious. One, two, three. Okay, you have to have someone you really love deeply die. Of course, this hasn't happened to me yet. Anybody in the Zoom had this experience? No answer. Okay, good. All right, so now let me bring it all together. We've talked about 3 different feelings, as you can see, right? Which Marcel is saying, I've stumbled on these 3 experiences, and I've wondered about them. I've wondered, what if I can take these feelings seriously? What if they are really pointing me to something deeper? And he stops there. That's typical Marcel. He's never going to go there and be like, yeah, you have to be. He's like, what if? That's all he's leaving us with. What if? And he's leaving us with a doubt which we then are invited to explore or not. He doesn't care. He's saying, I've sensed this. I sense there's a direction. I sense there is a dimension. I sense there is a possibility. It is now up to us to explore our own inner states and to judge by ourselves whether this is true or not, right? He really leaves it open. This is very typical existentialist philosophy where you cannot know what he's saying is true unless you walk that path or choose to walk that path. Now, of course, so going back now to the original question, right? He has tried to show that there might be such a dimension as being, but the question is, how do we connect to it, right? Here we're talking about random experiences which hit us maybe once or twice in life, right? And then we sense a connection to being. But is there a way that we can systematically connect to being, that we can really proactively connect to that dimension, right? All he's talking about here is glimpses that he's had of being, right? But is there a way to proactively deepen that connection, right? And so he talks about that. So I want to look at that a little bit. He says here, page 38. Third line, creative fidelity, which is really important concept, but we won't go into it. He says, creative fidelity consists in maintaining ourselves actively in a permeable state. And there is a mysterious interchange between this free act and the gift granted in response to it. Creative fidelity is the ability to be open, permeable. The way that we can proactively connect to this deeper dimension so that we can slowly overcome the despair and find our anchor in being is to simply become open to these gifts, to these experiences, to these graces. We can't make them happen, right? This is very different from Nietzsche's criticism, right? When he says, here you are, what's the word? Sinking, drowning in your sorrow, right? And so in order to, right, you proactively try to create something that you can hang on to. Here, it's not about creating something you can hang on to. It's about being open to receiving, when it chooses to come, these experiences, right? So again, it's not anything that you can create, right? This is simply an openness to this realm, to these experiences, and the more you open up, the more permeable, you know what it means, right? It's like water goes through, permeable. The more permeable you become, the more you will receive these gifts, these intuitions, these glimpses of being, and the more in touch you will be with that dimension. So all he's saying is that the way to connect is to remain open to these experiences, remain open to these feelings, remain in a state of wonder, remain in a state of exploration, in a state of curiosity, remain in the what if and the excitement of the exploration of maybe there is such a dimension. The more you remain open to this what if, the more this dimension will begin to be glimpsed by you, will begin to reveal itself to you. That's what he is saying here. So this applies especially, of course, to if somebody dies, right? It's not about trying to make them come back, right? It's about being open to this experience of presence, right? Rather than trying to conjure them or talk to them and so forth, right? Which is, for Marcel, this is you're trying too hard. The realm of being, you can't make it happen. You got to receive it. You can't just try to do things, right? You have to just be open. Okay. So hopefully by now you're ready to respond to Nietzsche. I think we've given you enough insights for you to do that. Is there a test? Okay. All right, great. Let's talk about the test briefly. Oh my God, I'm running out of battery. Let me stop the recording.